This is the 56th episode of the Effective Executive podcast and YouTube channel. And I decided to cover a subject that came up in social media because it does actually come up with conversations with executives quite a bit. And I've named this episode Beating the Status Quo. So this is the conversation in the way that it went. Someone posted, one of the hardest parts of improvement is breaking through the gravitational pull of the status quo. It's amazing how much effort good people will spend doing everything they possibly can to not change, in caps. And as a result, not improve, in all caps. All improvement requires change. So I decided to respond, and I put, sounds like an approach problem. Status quo is kept when the alternative is either not better or not perceived to be better. The response I got back was, it could be. Building the will to change requires methods that support learning and the practical values that, like learning from experience, evidence-based practice, driving out fear, experimentation. And the way I respond to this is probably the subject of most of this particular episode, which is, unfortunately, most change approaches focus on mandates from the hierarchy. When you let workers design their own work, the acceptance is close to 100%. And so I think this is really the conversation we need to get into. When I talk to executives, I have conversations kind of go like this. They won't change. So my question usually is, who is they? And the response I get back is those people, we or I are trying to change. Did they participate is my question. In the change solution? No, but I support consultants came up with the solution, or the smart ones, which implies that the other people are dumb. So, I mean, do you see kind of where I'm going with this and what the problem is? And this gets back to some of the conversations I've had in my episodes that basically are around micromanagement. People hate to be micromanaged. They certainly don't like to be told what to do when they're trying to do a job in which you either aren't doing anymore because now you're an executive, or you've never done. So telling people how they should do their work or making changes to the work, even if it's in the name of technology or the smart people or the support people, like finance said that they need to do this, are all bad ideas that come from the hierarchy, from any of the areas other than the people that actually do the work. See, management's job is to remove barriers, not make more of them. And by virtue of micromanagement, you're typically making more barriers for people to try to get their work done. And they will happily change, as I noted, close to 100% if they're participating in what the solution is. Now, what we're after is a solution that works. Does it have to be your solution or the smart people's solutions or the consultant's solution, support? I think you're completely missed the point. And unfortunately, there are very few executives out there that really get this. Sometimes they'll say the words, but their actions are completely different. You know, they're constantly coming up with new rules, new policy changes, new solutions. And it's kind of natural because you have your favorites. And a lot of the times those are people that are either in the hierarchy or, have favor with you in some particular way. And it's something that will drive people away from your organization. We know how difficult it is to hire people or get people in an organization, and just making it more difficult for them is certainly not an answer. So some of the excuses that I hear, when I have these conversations, one in particular is, but they don't see what others see. In other words, somebody from the outside is going, and I agree with that. Actually, I do. Different perspectives are awesome as far as they go. But, um, you know, the follow on to that is the people who we're trying to change, they just answer calls or talk to customers, really unimportant things like that, or code or write business requirements or whatever the action is in a particular organization. If you're affecting change on these people just because they're lower in the hierarchy or you think smart people have got it, I think you're completely missing the boat. You're creating more barriers for them. And if they're participating in what the answer is and actually control what those decisions are, you're going to get 100% compliance. They'll figure it out. It may not be the perfect answer the first go through, but if you stick with it, and they'll figure it out. And the benefit of that is, if you want a competitive advantage, an unfair advantage over everyone else, the more they understand about the broader system and learning synthetic thinking and those types of things, and you could do it with them, the more they understand about the whole, the better they're going to perform. And this functional separation of work that keeps everybody kind of pinholed, in a particular spot in the organization is really what's holding you back. So when we talk in terms of beating the status quo, it doesn't have to be that hard. It may take just a little bit longer, but you're going to get people that are engaged when they're involved in creating their own solutions for their own work. And that is the message I wanted to get to you this week. Catch you next week.